Jason Epstein. He is the president of the political consultancy company South 5 Strategies. Thank you so much for joining us here on the program today. Now, there's a stark difference in trust for democratic governments compared to autocratic ones. Trust in the governments of Germany and the U.S. has fallen, while trust in the Chinese government has increased. Why are we seeing this pattern?
Well, thank you for having me, Efnan. Some of what we're seeing today was happening pre-pandemic. Brexit and Trump's election are the two most vivid examples. Whereas the pandemic was probably the accelerant, the perceived ineffectiveness with the death toll climbing and climbing, the perceived ineffectiveness of government responses in democratic societies, and then, frankly, the reaction to these democratic societies, to the democratic governments when they were criticized or when questions were asked by scientists and researchers and others about measures being taken. There are concerns about civil liberties. There are concerns about the economy and how many in these democratic societies suddenly find themselves without work. Meanwhile, large companies, those that can take advantage of consumers ordering online, seem to have done very well. And this has created in many people's minds a wealth disparity. And they've taken it out on their concerns have been taken out on these governments.
Right. As you mentioned, the problem isn't just the pandemic here, but obviously the situation has been exacerbated by the pandemic. Walk us through some of the struggles that these governments are facing, these democratic governments rather, are facing due to the pandemic in the past 2 years.
Well, certainly it's a matter of keeping first and foremost, keeping the economies afloat and ensuring that citizens have are able to keep their heads above water. There's also the concern, of course, about violence. People always need to be safe in their homes. They need to feel safe in the streets. And then if the government is not providing these basic services, it's frankly not surprising that at some point citizens look for alternatives.
It's not easy, is it, to rebuild that trust, especially when so many people have been affected by something as big as a pandemic? How are governments going to manage building that trust back that they very much need, in most cases, to be successful themselves?
That might be an easy question to answer here, but to implement will be far more difficult. There needs to be more debate, not less debate. There cannot be one single answer to every obstacle that comes in our way. So there needs to be a leveling. The governments need to talk to their citizens, not in a condescending way. Governments need to behave. Democratic governments need to behave like democracies, because what we've seen to date is very often they actually take on the role that you would think happens in less than democratic societies, in authoritarian ones. And so that can help explain, of course, why perhaps China, which doesn't exactly have a very open political model, does very well. What China was doing before the pandemic is kind of like what China is doing currently. Mm-hmm. They don't have to answer the same way to the concerns of their citizens.
All right, Jason Epstein, unfortunately, that's all the time I have left, but thank you so much for sharing that insight with us here on the NewsHour.